An optional total gym accessory is the leg pulley system. Within the leg pulley system, you'll get the ankle harness as well as the foot harness. The first thing we're going to talk about is the ankle harness. So with the ankle harness, you can slide it on like you would a boot, and you have varying points of attachments, which will make more sense as we talk about the different positions you can use this accessory with. When you're using this accessory, you can have one side of the pulley attached to the glide board, and the other will be attached to a rail latch. Depending upon the hamstring length and the requirements you want for that mobility, you can bring this incline level down, or you can leave it where it is. In this instance, what I'm going to do is have him come in. He can come down. There you go. I'll come in, and I might push up the board if needed and adjust for his hamstring. I'm going to attach it to one of the D-rings. His leg will be straight, and I can use it simply for just basically having him stretch out his hamstring, or I can add it that he's adding more of a strength component where he's pulling down. He can also be pushing and pushing out and coming back in. But the reason why there's so many points of attachment is because you're not stationary, you're not stuck in this supine position. He can also transition into a side. So if he was to transition into side lying, so I'm going to have you do that now, you'll notice that maybe you have a point of attachment where he's maybe doing a knee in and out. He's kind of doing hip flexion and extension. And that might not be where you want the force to be, or you don't like how it's coming in. So I can stabilize the board with my foot, bend your knee for me, and now I can change it so maybe I want it here. Or I can change it so maybe it's more in front if I'm working hip extension. So that's why we have so many different D-rings, is to allow for the exercise and really changing up where you want that force to be, or that line of pull. So what I'm going to have you do is we're going to transition into the foot harnesses. So I'm going to have you just come in. You can reach for the end, turn onto your back, leg comes up, you stabilize with the other foot, and then I'll take this off. He's going to take off the ankle harness. So when we move to the foot harnesses, typically we're using both feet. So I'm going to disattach from the glide board. I'm going to put a harness on each side. And if you notice, Jeff's not wearing socks or shoes. Typically, I mean, you can wear socks, but it's kind of nice to have more traction. And also the shoes get a little bit bulky, so it gets hard to be put on the harness. So here we go. All right, so here, he's going to place one foot in. More often than not with my patients, I'm having my foot here to stabilize the board. You'll see another accessory called the slide distance regulator that can be used, and I'll use that as well. So I'm going to have you just slip your foot in. I'm going to have you bring your other knee to your chest, and then you can slip the other foot in. As you can see, it goes around the arch and the Achilles. Then I have him just push his legs out or bring his legs up to the sky, and then he starts to feel what it feels like in his body. And from here, the legs can be straight, and he can just have his legs turn out or parallel, and he can just start to hip hinge, bring the legs up and then slowly back down. So a couple of things to consider. One is if I'm going to have him stay with more of a flexibility intention of the exercise, I want his head a little bit further up the board to start, but to increase the flexibility of the hamstrings, I would then move down the board, because that's going to pull his legs up further, give him more range of motion to bring the legs towards you. If I'm working more on stabilization, or maybe I'm doing some alternating bicycle moves, so I'm going to have you transition to scissors and bicycles, and I want the board to stay still and I want him to have a good range of motion, I might have his head toward the top end of the board. So oftentimes people think leg pulleys are just for legs, but a lot of times I'm using this with my lumbar stabilization patients or anything to build core strength. And I have the ability to just take a little bit more of the load off with the legs and have the pulleys take it up. Same element with respect to range of motion. So if I was having difficulty getting him into position, I'm going to move back to the fact that I can add on any one of these extenders. Now the Total Gym Power Tower is a lot taller in height. It's the tallest one we have. So sometimes the cable length does feel like it's short and people have a little bit of trouble getting in. So I'm going to have you bend your knee. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to extend out the cable. Now when you extend a cable, you also then increase the requirements for stability for some people. So I mentioned this, that some of my more advanced patients, I might extend the cable on because more range of motion means more they have to stabilize within that motion. I might exactly do the same thing for my beginner patients on this, that I want them to have that ability to accommodate for their hamstrings. So when you use an extender and why are for different reasons. The other thing you can think about when you're doing these leg pulleys is you can move from a bilateral, and as we saw, a unilateral motion. And you can have the intention of having the board move, or you can have the board stay static, again increasing that proprioception and that balance. To get out of this position, you have the person bring their knees to their chest, and maybe you might stabilize the board. I'm going to have you do it now. You're going to slip one foot out. They tell people to reach for the inside of the rails, and I call that home base. And then you're going to reach the other foot. I will tell you now that you want to make it very clear where the person puts their feet when they enter in and out of the leg pulleys, so that when they come up, they actually they're not searching for a place and they know exactly where they're going.